that they're attacking the young males. And this is actually part of the genocide operations of Unum Sanctum and the Doctrine of Discovery to tear the family apart. And of course, these young men growing up are not aware until a later age that their role as protectors and providers for their families have been neutralized at a very young age. So many of them get out into the world of family totally handicapped, totally disabled, having no access to the resources of the land, not knowing that the land is theirs, having no access to the economics, not knowing that the resources that create the economic are theirs, thinking that the people who are governing over them and their families, whether under the guise of human services or family services, etc., under the Margaret Sanger operations of family planning, under the abortion clinics, which are all part of the Margaret Sanger operations, of the genocide operations of Unum Sanctum and the Doctrine of Discovery, having no idea that these are actually continued institutionalized acts of war against them. And as they grow up, not recognizing that the females are being trained in many instances to be agents of the state against their own interest, against the male, and over a period of time are actually helping to destroy their own family structures, which is, of course, is what you're experiencing right now on many fronts, in many areas across the land, etc. And not knowing that all of this is being engineered. It is not natural to them, it's being engineered. And then, of course, many of them not having a knowledge of that engineering think that there's a problem between men and women from a genetic perspective, when that is not and never has been the truth. They are actually under attack. Again, for the few who are aware that they're actually being attacked and who want to try to help mitigate or counter the Unum Sanctum Doctrine of Discovery operations, one important fact that you need to be aware of is and are the issues and the right of claim relative to allodial titles. Because what it will do is start putting a wall between yourself, and the owners and operators of the human trafficking trading entity companies, known as these local municipal government corporate entities that are not creatures of the Constitution, but are actually foreign, alien, hybrid European companies, corporations that were constructed for the very purpose of actually escheating the estates of Aboriginal peoples under the guise, hidden guise, of the Doctrine of Discovery and Unum Sanctum operations. So rather than say it's Doctrine of Discovery, they'll have terms like City of Camden, or the City of Philadelphia, City of New York, as an example, City of Los Angeles, as an example, City of Oakland, City of San Francisco, things like this. And people who don't really understand this would not recognize that these political metaphor phrases like city of are actually not creatures of treaties, nor creatures of the Constitution coming from treaties that were set in place for preserving the people's rights, etc., under Constitution operations. And knowing that people have not been aware of that is also why we shared some of these things with you on this paper here, which we'll share with some of you in the future, those who asked for it, because it's 33. And of course, I didn't go through all of them. I went through some of them to show you an example of what we're presenting to you, etc., backed by reference. And it's backed by reference because we already know that the unum sanctum operators already pay people to troll and to try to dismiss this information we've been sharing with you, because it helps the people. And also with the knowledge empowers people, not beliefs. Beliefs empowers no one. You know, believing in Santa Claus doesn't get you gifts. It really doesn't. It's fun, and it's, you know, bright lights and everything, but believing in Santa Claus gets you no gifts. It's probably because your mother and your father or aunts and uncles and people who love you sacrifice and go into debt to acquire things for you, to bring joy in the winter solstice season. The traditions that has always been part of African culture of gift giving, not to be confused with the commercialization of the winter solstice, mind you. However, again, I'll remind you that belief in Santa Clauski does not give you gifts. All right, so let's get over that. Again, I want you to write this down so that you'll stay focused on the purpose of our discussion tonight. Aboriginal titles, ABORIGINAL, titles, TITLES. And you can put that also in harmony with what is known as allodial titles. Allodial, ALLDIAL. All right, LODIAL. Now I'm going to look up allodial for you to make sure that you are familiar with what allodial is, because it's very important. So when you're looking at Aboriginal title, you're looking in the nature of allodial title. It has not been promoted among the people because they don't want you to think like this. They don't want you to know these things, and they definitely don't want you exercising such knowledge. This is a major reason why expect that you're going to get opposition, and then you're going to get people who will troll and try to discourage you from paying attention to this logically, because many of them have stock in many of these corporate entities that have actually been robbing you. Now, allodial means free, not holding to any lord and not holding to any superior, owned without obligation or vassalage or fealty. It is the opposite of feudal. Now, keep in mind that Aboriginal titles, which are allodial, were operative on this land prior to 1913. So we're not talking ancient Egyptian history where you got to dig up 3 pyramids to find this out. We're not talking about centuries ago in the concepts of how history has been taught in North America. You're talking about within the past century. You're talking in a period of time that many of the people are still living today in their physical form. So prior to 1913, all property on the land was held in allodial title. I don't have to ask you, because I already know that most of the people that are even listening to this program may not even have ever heard of what an allodial title is, or Aboriginal title. And the people who have been dancing with them in these little organizations and caring about our people and loving the children and our communities never bring this kind of discussion up. I don't have to ask you to wonder why. The fact that they don't should be self-evident.
A couple questions here.
Yes.
Richard Amunrabe says, can we just write land title / allodial title on any form or on paper?
Of course. This is basic. Look, let's look at this. This is one of the things that must be introduced and practiced among our people. Number one, coming together seriously in an organized body politic platform, coming together in propria persona su juris su heritis, which means being yourself. You cannot operate in law, in truth, in jurisprudence and law. You cannot operate truly effectively under the nom de guerre operations such as Negro, Black, Colored, and Indian under the Bureau of Indian Affairs, although limited operations have been taking place under the so-called Bureau of Indian Affairs. You must be in propria persona. You must be in your proper person. This is why you'll see many people who are cognate of these actual operations have been promoting heavily around the country, on the land, around the kingdom, on the land, for our people to nationalize, because we know that a right of claim, and particularly a right of allodial claim, a right of aboriginal claim, cannot be made by someone who is not aboriginal. And so now you're getting into the issue of what is known as jus sanguinis versus or distinguished from jus soli. So jus sanguinis has a true consanguine connection to the pedigree of true Americans, which we read here in the book. That is the copper complexion people who are the true Americans. And the distinction must be made from the hybrid alien colonial descendants of hybrid Europeans who have been traditionally claiming to be Americans. And understand, that's not putting them down. It's not attacking them. Don't confuse that. It's not that. It's just telling the truth of who is who and who is not who they've been claiming to be. However, understanding and knowing that the reason that the hybrid Europeans have been trained to call themselves Americans because they have been making claims on the land and the resources under the doctrine of discovery, which many of you will find many of the court cases by which they've been stealing people's lands. They have won under the rule of the doctrine of discovery, not because they had a legitimate claim. They've been ruled to be claimants valid under the doctrine of discovery. And then when our people are discussing these things, they're trained to start talking racism and prejudice, which means they're already off the mark. Again, why this discussion of Aboriginal titles. And keep in mind, Aboriginal title is first claim. First people, first claim, and right of claim. And if this is again in law, for those of you who already know it, and you see some people around the kingdom that have been talking about right of claim, and they'll make claims on the land or titles, etc., is based on their knowledge of what we're talking about right now. However, if a hybrid has no right of claim. This is why they use mortgages and deeds to claim the land. But knowing that most people don't know that these are false documents, totally false, totally fraudulent documents, and they do not supersede Aboriginal title. This must be known to you. So write this down so you can get this very clear. So as we go on into these things, maybe even in the future, in more refined argument, know this in law and in international law. Aboriginal title is a superior claim to all deeds and other instruments that are used in bodies politics on claims of land and estates. Keep that in mind. So understand, mortgages and deeds are actually fraudulent and are created to create debt under feudal law. Aboriginal title dismisses all that BS because it's BS. It was always BS because whenever you're talking mortgages and deeds, remember, you're immediately talking feudal law operations of hybrid foreign European colonists and their descendants. You're not talking Aboriginal anything. You're talking occupation, operations under colonial executions of doctrine of discovery and unum sanctum. Those operations by right of law do not apply to Aboriginal people. However, under false pretenses, many of you know as 14th Amendment operations, that's one of the tricks that have been used to impose the feudal law operations, avoided inheritance upon Aboriginal people. And this is why you've seen so-called assigned Black leaders promoting 14th Amendment Negro platforms, which declares the people as corpse or dead under corporation, and therefore not heritable in law. And of course, that's been used traditionally, also known as 14th Amendment, which rightfully and historically does not apply to our people whatsoever. But because they've attached to it and claimed to be a part of it in order to try to have some substance of life and some kind of substance of economics, not knowing that they're abandoning their estates, and that platform of the 14th Amendment for the Constitution for the United States, etc., was actually used to steal their land and their estates under the rule of escheating. Again, why it's important for us to look at Aboriginal titles as your rightful and most effective remedy, knowing that there's going to be opposition, because that's the ball of wax, because you start exercising that and you start getting these people across the land to start exercising their right of claim, Aboriginal title, ball game over. However, if they can keep the people distracted, beating around the bush, going into the wrong courts, etc., to municipal courts, etc., which were actually put in place to steal their estates. It's almost like a contradiction. And so our people are not aware of their responsibility to themselves and to their progeny to enforce the treaties, etc., and then make their Aboriginal claims, i.e., because the Constitution for the United States is put in place to keep the foreign Europeans who've been doing business on our land, keep them in check and keep them reminded of their obligations to all treaties in force and to the principles undergirding or supporting that Constitution, all of which comes from honesty or Aboriginal law, etc., and logically the treaties. So again, as a countermeasure to the negative activities that are taking place now, and which have been going on anyway, to tear our families apart, take in consideration and do all your research and be diligent in your research on Aboriginal titles, because it is a rightful and superior claim to all mortgages and deeds. Keep that in mind. So write that down. Aboriginal titles are superior claims and superior right of claims to all and any mortgage or deed. Fact. And put that in quotes. Ingrain that in your mind. Teach it to your family members. Teach it to your children. And expect opposition, because that's the ball of wax. Any other questions, Doctor?
Let me see. What is the language, Lakar Infinity says, what is the language we should be speaking in reference to right terminology? Does any Moor have a book on the way a Moor should speak?
Yeah, keep in mind. Let's get this clear from the beginning. Most of the Moors here in North America speak one language, which is mixed international trade language, which you know is English. Understand that English is a Moorish language. It's not the hybrids. It belongs to you. It's actually Creole. What you call English is really Creole, and it was evolved from Phoenicians, etc., which they also call the Gullah, etc., because we were the river people, and we've been trading for millennia, for centuries. And so English is a conglomeration of Moorish Latin and many of your other African linguistic forms, French, German, etc., which are actually African languages. And the people, most people think that those Pictic language, because they're Pictic and Moray and Dob, etc. And the first thing comes into the people's minds are the hybrid Europeans because of their having control of these areas, or of the peninsula, Iberian Peninsula. So if you, and Phoenicia. So if we say to most of these Asiatic Africans now, tell us about the history and tell us about the geographics of Iberia and Phoenicia. And most of them would start looking at a map in Southern or South Asia, which we call Africa now, and they'd be looking, trying to find Phoenicia, etc., and not knowing that Phoenicia is Europe. That's fact. Phoenicia is Europe. Iberia is the European peninsula, which you call Portugal, España, Española, Italia, which you already know as in the area that you call Spain, which is Al-Andalus. That's North Africa, northern part of South Africa. It's the truth.
I think what the questioner is asking is more to do with not so much dialectic, but what's the right type of how. This is
where I think the question follows. This is where the question follows is more harmonic with what are the legal terms and law terms that have been used to steal our state, and should we be familiar with them? Yes, you should.
I mean, just the thing of as cheating.
As
right
cheating.
There, you hear cheat in there, and I'm thinking, how obvious is? I'm glad you like it.
Keep in mind,
how obvious is something that says there is cheating your property?
Exactly. Like for instance, like let's look at this. Like say for instance, like say we can go around the corner here in Wilmington, in area, in the Nanacoke area of the Nanacoke Moors. This area is Nanakoki. This is us. Nanakoki is the Moors of this area. And they'll falsely call us in history like Delaware Indians and stuff. No, Nanacoke. All right, so the Nanakoki of this area, we can go in this area right now that's under hybrid European operations of the Wilmington Corporation, which is a corporation, not the land. People need to understand this. These are political zones or jurisdictions that are created under corporate activity and placed on the land. These are zones for taxing. And I know that our people really need to be aware that, like, say, for instance, this building here, right? And there's a number that's on the face of this building. And they will deceive you into saying that this number is your house. No, it's not. That number is a designation in a logbook for tax collection. That's the only purpose it serves. It has no other purpose whatsoever. You attach yourself to it, then they call you taxpayer. Now that's feudal law. You don't rebuke that, right? Mm-hmm. Then they put what you call force, because on the feudal law, they force you. There is no such thing as voluntary nothing. They rob you, extort you, and if you don't take it, they'll take the house, say that the house is theirs, and they're lying. But that's called as cheating. Now they've been doing that since 1913. See, but people have lost cognizance because, how many generations have they dissolved since 1913, whereas there's no reference point. And so many of our people, and my family included, right, are struggling for a so-called job somewhere to live or to try to support their families so that their families can eat and be out of the weather, and can give you stories where grandmother had untold acres of land, whether Virginia, Jersey area, what we call, Shakamoxon or Shakyabi area, which they'll call Jersey, right? New Amsterdam, which they'll call New York. And we all have that history. How many of our people never dawned on them that the land was stolen from your families through the creation of the mortgages and deeds that were placed on them since 1913? Because most of us can trace the loss of family land within the last couple generations. And that's a fact. But it never dawns on them of how it was done to them, how it never dawns on them that they were cheated. They'll say, oh, my grandmom had land and we had a farm and all this stuff, and the children lost it for taxes, not knowing that tax never applied to them. And that that inherited land was not to be taxed. But they misclassified the land, and then misclassified themselves, claiming to be Americans, and then taxed the land, knowing that the people, after a couple of generations, couldn't keep up with it. They just used what they call inflation to do it. And so they need a couple of generations. They already know that the tax would come a dead pledge, what known as a mortgage, an implied debt, all built on a fraud, and then the people can't pay the debt, and then they take the land. This is what they've been doing. This is exactly what they've been doing. That's what a cheat is. You see? Mm-hmm. And a cheat is essentially an estate. It's an obstruction of the natural process of inheritance. Keep this in mind. Escheat, this is what me and Dr. Naila was just making reference to. Escheat is an obstruction of the natural course of inheritance. And this is also how they've been gentrifying our communities over the years. And because of the younger generations, thereafter, lost reference, they didn't know that these things were being done. Because in their mind, they've been trained that they owe taxes to the foreign alien Europeans who were being claimed to be Americans, not knowing that they were actually being attacked. But this is a result of lack of information. And of course, this is why Gates Foundation set up the General Education Board to dumb these people down. And then generationally steal their estates. And now our people are pretty much subjugated. So now they can control the jobs, and so make sure that the men can't properly take care of their families. Then they use that and then pit the women against the men, which completes the cycle of the genocide. And this is why you see much of what you call these broken relationships that you're experiencing now in society. And the people are thinking they're mad at each other. Oh, he cheated. Oh, she cheated. Oh, no, they're trying to survive. And they're being groomed to that. And even, whether they use the music platform to influence the youth, the dress codes to influence them, etc. All of this is part of the unum sanctum doctrine of discovery is cheat operations. And that's the truth. And you can't make people know. What you can do is share with them information, trusting that they are interested enough or loving enough, because we've been trained also not to love each other.
Well, somebody is almost asking about whether or not the person was asking about language, and then they clarified and wanted to know if anyone had done a book. And I pulled out here.
Also, do you have more information here?
Yes.
Give more information. Now,
that book is going to help them.
I'm going to share with you all 2 books that all persons who would like to have a foundation in grammatication, or a foundation in etymology, a foundation of the proper jurisprudence phrases that are applied to us, and also some of which have been used to escheat you. Here's one: Etymology and Vocabulary by Abdullah Iltalib Mosi Bey.
Yeah. A little bit more further over. A little bit. Yeah, there you go. Right there. There you go.
That's the front. And this is the back. And as you can see, take a screenshot, because you can order it right down here. And if you want to have a really grounded knowledge of the true politics of the West and the world, and your history and jurisprudence, and of treaties and constitutional principles, Moors and Masonry, by Abdullah Iltalib Mosi Bey. And of course, those of you who want to acquire this book, you can get it on more civil letter. And he has many other books that will show you the culture and the history and some jurisprudence established in fact. Then you have the Masonic Compass and the Square, Measurement and Timekeeping. By Abdullah Iltalib Mosi Bey. So the curriculum is there for you. Here's Moorish Mystery. Mysticism.
That's Jamal.
Africa. Moorish Dominions. And we have a lot of other literature. And of course, those are by Jamal. Yeah. And these other last two are by Jamal. Now, point that I'm making to you, you have a lot of professors and scholars among your own. However, they have to publish in what you call in our own venues, because mainstream controlled media under the Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation is not going to give you this kind of information. No, they're not. Don't expect it. However, these are Aboriginal books by Aboriginal people with the true knowledge and the view of the world from the eyes of an Aboriginal, distinguished from an occupier or descendant of occupiers who are here to asking you to hold up the vocabulary of the first book. Yes, to extort or, escheat your land. And everybody should have this for their children. But that includes adults. And adults will quickly find out how much they've been miseducated. It's shamefully. So when we share information with you, we have professors among our body's politics who are more than highly qualified, to produce curriculum for you. And this is great for all homeschoolers. And of course, it's going to lead you to other writings by Professor Abdullah. It is, to be blunt, priceless. To be bluntly truthful with you. And it is sort of like, get back on your experience of loving philology, or loving books, loving to read, loving to study. Because knowledge is power. And those who logically don't want you to know that you're Aboriginal would promote ideas and statements and principles that imply like as an example. A book like this says, see this? Black people are dead in law, so restore your citizenship. This is by the author Issa Rael, as an example.
You get that from Sister Cynthia Martinell. Buy this book. I'm going to put this on buythisbook.com.
So there's literature. There's much literature coming from Moors to bring remedy to our people. Invest in yourselves and invest in learning what's really going on. And again, because things are moving so quickly in the political economic world today, it's almost like things are changing by the day. So, you know, how do you say? It's sort of like you're in a knife fight and people are talking about how many bandages you got. It's better to have some bandages anyway than none at all. And because a lot of this information should have been known and should have been with you from childhood. We must realize that we've been handicapped. However, if you're breathing, you can still achieve, you know, a higher degree of knowledge by actually studying, in fact, reality and things that are going on in the real political world. So the economic problems that are plaguing our communities, which have been tagged with the nom de guerre Black and people of color, those are tags. Those are nom de guerre. Write that down too. Nom de guerre. And you got to be familiar with the real true designations that have been falsely promoted as identifications. They are really designations. They're political designations that actually set forth in political operations that such persons are dead in the view of law. And that's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. They're actually war names. It's called pseudonyms, but they're also referred to as war names. So when they're calling you Negro, Black, and colored and people of color, it's actually an attack. But people who can't read don't recognize it, that it's an attack. It's unfortunate, but it's true.
And people want to carry, you know, the Black title around like it's some badge of honor.
That's why it's promoted. It's promoted to rebury them. See, like a scholar would know, like say, for instance, when as the George Soros Foundation set up the Black Lives Matter program operations, right? The surface appearance for people who can't read think that it's put there to help us or to help our people because they've been trained to call themselves that tag and they think that's a helping hand. No, it's designed to rebury the people because they recognize that there's a movement on the land where the people are becoming conscious. And even though they put a lot of effort to suppress information and to misrepresent information and also even mock and make fun of the knowledge, the true pedigree of the people who don't know, who can't read, think that they're addressing, or they set up this organization with billions of dollars to help our people. It's a reburial. And then I'll tell you this. If people would remove emotions, right, and just observe, meaning that if they would detach themselves and observe and just take note, they'll notice that everywhere where they put people out in the name of peaceful protest, they're tearing up things and burning things and shooting people and hurting people. And most of the people that are doing it are hybrid pale-faced Europeans. Some call them Antifa and other things like that. And the platform was created for that purpose, not really to help the people. If you pay attention, most of the places where they tore up in the name of peaceful protest, aren't they so-called tag Black communities? Mm-hmm. So now, the little bit of stores they did have, they tore them up.
But the people that have come in
from outside
are outsiders.
of
Yeah,
course, of course.
Yeah, the perpetrators are largely, if you look at those videos of that,
the issue is they're seizing the emotion side of our people being abused, implying that they're helping our people when they're actually burying them. And it's, again, even like I was talking to a brother, I think a week and a half ago or something like that. Yeah, a week and a half ago on 52nd Street. And he was talking about black, as a consanguine identity. And I took him to a dictionary and showed him black means pale colors. White spot, that's what black means. And you know how many of our people who are alleged to be caring for our people will teach their children that black means African identity. And that's a term of endearment, etc. It means white spot and it means pale colors. It's nothing wrong with the word black. However, it's a word that's put in place to escheat the people's estates. And because no one goes into the unum sanctum operations, for people who don't know the history, it never dawns on them that this was in place to steal their estates, to escheat their estates. Again, it's why this is a subject matter, about allodial titles and aboriginal titles, because the aboriginal title is superior. Logically, one must be in the consanguine connection with the aboriginal right of claim to make that claim. This is where nationalization comes in.
I know there's someone on here that wanted you to expound on decolonization, but I wanted to say to
decolonization.
But I also wanted to say that you like last month you did an actually whole program on that.
Oh yeah.
So they need to go back and watch that video.
Yeah, well, mention that so they can go back to that.
They just go back on our site.
Yes, because all of nationalization itself is part of decolonization.
You were saying that.
All the information shared now is a part of decolonization. Consciousness of your pedigree and consanguinity is denationalization. Is nationalization. I apologize. And the absence of that knowledge and the suppression of that knowledge is denationalization, which is what has been taking place, which has much to do with the support foundation of the existing conditions that the people have been falsely encouraged to call racism and prejudice, which is a total diversion, and it is a mind control operations dealing with taxidermy, etc., set up by the naturalist Frederick Blumenbach, etc., Johann Frederick Blumenbach, etc., Carlos Linnaeus, etc. And this is, in your 1700s, and has been used as the foundation of prototypical explanation of human evolution on the planet. It's totally contemporary, and of course, been used as a weapon by colonial operators in the Western Hemisphere. This is why you will always see them always relentlessly bring up racism and prejudice, race and prejudice, to ingrain it into people's mind. And it never dawns on the people that this prototypical operations by Carlos Linnaeus, etc., the 1700s, that is used as a weapon for schism operations, particularly by British, by English hybrid Europeans under unum sanctum operations, doctrine of discovery, the crusade operations under the Spanish Inquisition, manifesting as Western Hemisphere colonial occupation, is a weaponized system to achieve the necessary escheat operations to claim the land. This is also why they fervently keep claiming to be Americans. It is a political strategy, and that must be understood. It has nothing to do with truth. It has nothing to do with honor. It is absolutely war operations, and it's a political strategy. That's why we have to keep reminding our people, stop calling the pale-faced hybrid Europeans Americans. They're not Americans. Don't be mad at them. It's just, they're just thieves. You know, they steal people's lands and the resources. However, you're suffering because of it. You know, your families are poor because of it. Your people are packed into concentration camps. They'll call them city and state jails and prisons. They are concentration camps. Got broken families, concentration camps, Margaret Sanger operations for the genociding of the people off the land so they could claim the land.
The Democratic vice presidential candidate is on record as having said, having not wanted to release the early release in California and Khalifa territory because it would reduce the in-prison workforce population.
Exactly, because it's that, well, you know, it's connotative, but it's slavery.
Yeah.
You know, and he also called them roaches, called the children roaches.
Well, I'm talking about the vice presidential. The
candidate called Biden, called the children roaches.
No. When I said California, I'm talking about Kamala Harris.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about roaches.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I'm talking about phrases, statements that he has made.
That happened 4 blocks from here in the pool where he used to work right around here, where he said he liked to have the children play with the hair on his legs and the roaches. But people don't hear that. Like that thing I sent you, they said we don't care about what he did.
Yeah, but you already know, and I know that he's running as CEO for the United States Corporation Company. It's not the country. And this is back to even some of the things that we've read here, concepts. People are still under the misinformation that the United States is a country. The United States is a private corporation under international law occupation of the Western Hemisphere. See, so if some of these things aren't, you know, sitting with you in your knowledge base, you come off a false foundation and logically have false expectations, which is, again, why people keep getting frustrated with the voting process. They keep voting for change. Yeah, they do get changed. They get poorer. Their families are more broken. It's not the country. It's a corporation occupying your country. Country is Morocco.
Here's the thing. Here's an observation I made. A lot of times we will look at other countries like, you know, Panama or some other country, someplace.
Same thing.
We'll say these places. It's a shame they're under occupation, not realizing that we too.
Well, first,
right.
Which is why you forgot you're under
occupation. We look out and see everybody else under occupation except us.
Yeah,
we think we're free.
That's part of the Gates Foundation training. There you go. So we know that, you know, this we didn't get in this condition overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. However, for whatever good that we can do to help the people, for them to become active, starts to dismantle the mind control systems that they're suffering from. The major issue, another issue is, the more active we are, the less likely the next generation buys into the false platforms that we ourselves have been nurturing under ignorance, because we will stop practicing them. Because remember, the strength of fiat operations is the blind faith maintenance. It is meaning that the blind faith, are people thinking that this misinformation is not damaging, it's just a matter of somebody's opinion. But they just sacrifice the next generation. But they don't see that they've done it. You know, and they have not taken responsibility that they themselves have done it. It's sort of like an enemy giving you arsenic and you feeding it to your children, and you say, they did this to my babies. Yes, with your help. You know, as an example, convincing women that they're helping women. So won't you want your breasts to be nice and shapely and Weibel-Fetzert and everything? Don't let your baby suck on those things. And so now your babies don't have their immune system together. Now they'll come stick them with viruses, actually plant them with nanoviruses and mercury and other poisons that create disease later.
Yeah, that's why they would say,
when the mother's milk is the true builder of the immune system.
But that's all they would say. I heard last year, I noticed last year, in the last couple of years, they had a commercial. And it says 1 out of 4 people born between 1945 and 1955 may have I think it was hepatitis C and be unaware. Now, I'm born in 1955. So one of the things I was saying, the only way they could say
they
that
gave it to you
because that's a 10-year period.
They gave it to them.
That in
yes. Even
vaccine.
with the so-called polio vaccine, they were giving the people hepatitis.
Right.
You know.
But another thing I wanted to say, as it comes to being colonized and under occupation, if the colonizers maybe had slanted eyes, or back then, remember Japan was here or some other. If the colonizers didn't look like the ones that we started to sympathize with, we would realize we were under occupation.
Yeah.
But we have been indoctrinated to working side by side, with the Albion, even though because we worked side by side with them when they were the white cargo. But anyway, so-called, we don't see them as that. We don't see that those who we were bringing up have somehow found a way to get an advantage over us and take over our. So
now you're looking at So for those of you who need some reference in history,
like if
go to Germany,
here, if we looked around in every place you saw Korean soldiers and whatever, we'd be like, we're under occupation. Yeah. But because we don't see, they don't look different. The training has given us that blinders to see.
It's sort of like, the blinder is the misinformation.
Yeah.
Of them claiming to be Americans for generations and getting our people to call them Americans. And after a while, they start saying, oh, they're Americans. They just have lighter complexion. Duh.
They don't realize when Hitler so-called fell, when we don't believe he did the way they think, these guys came over here. They didn't just come over here and start NASA. They came over here and did a whole lot of stuff that we think is American.
Yeah.
They started occupying this place. They changed names. Their names changed.
Let's set up another fact.
Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct. Let's set up another fact for those, since you brought that up. The average people here are being educated under the Gates Foundation that Germany under Hitler lost the war. The fact of it is they did not. As a matter of fact, NASA is dominated by the scientists from Germany who kicked U.S. corporations, our Sinskers. And the real deal of it is, this is why, as a matter of fact, the SS or the Social Security platform and all that stuff came from the SS. NASA is Nazi. It is. Now, it's not a condemnation, it's just a fact. That's why we read when you talk about the CIA, all the FCC and NASA, all of them are foreign entities occupying the land. They're not constitutional. They're not constitutional creatures at all. But I mean, it's a known fact.
Not by all, by some.
It's a known. You know how people know facts? Let's put it this way. How many people know the fact that Santa Claus is not real? How many people go in debt for sometimes years to support Santa Claus operations? How many people sacrifice things that their family needs to celebrate Santa Claus operations? And as a tradition, doing it. Not that they should or shouldn't. I mean, we're not arguing about whether they should or shouldn't. We're talking about their dedicated mind into it. It is no different than people, and I'm saying that to say this. Do people know Santa Claus is not real? Fact. And this is back to what we were saying earlier. Upon any examination, any minor resource, the people know that the United States is a private corporation. They don't want to acknowledge it because they've been part of the fraud, promoting it against their own children and encouraging their children to be a part of it while their children continually being injured, and then calling the injury racism and prejudice, which is not only a fraud, it's severely irresponsible. It's almost like on another level of people being so busy being a fraud and not expecting for it to have a very damaging consequence. And when the chickens come home to roost, and we're suffering the consequences now, saying things like, the white man did this to us, and then even blame their own land. America did this. They not only not knowing, they're making dumb, ignorant, and invalid statements from an emotional perspective that actually pushes the guilt off of those who are responsible, and then allows them to hide behind their LLCs, which is the mask of corporate entity, and they call the person. You punch them and they're arguing with the corporation. And you know, the city of Wilmington sent me, city of Wilmington never sent you nothing. Can't breathe, can't think, can't move, can't act. Is some man or woman using that platform 90% of the times to rob you, not to support you, not to do anything good for you, to rob you. And that goes for all of these other entities. Now, that's the truth. And people don't want to take the responsibility to start looking at this and start recognize that they've been misclassified so that the unum sanctum doctrine of discovery operation can take place. Whereas the Aboriginal title would have been the fence, and it is the fence to block such activities that have been, how do you say, initiated since 1913 and has pretty much decimated our communities. And rather than take responsibility and tell the truth about what's really going on, they'll start talking about racism and prejudice and Black Lives Matter and start marching around the place. Fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud. And of course, the outcome is what? Is it beneficial? Is it progressive? It is totally destructive. Now, that's a fact. However, for those who are willing to use their divine mind and really have some desire to help the following generations, and while you're at it, help yourself too, start talking about Aboriginal titles and do all research concerning Aboriginal titles. You're going to be shocked what you learn, and you're going to be shocked to learn what your so-called Black leaders haven't been telling you. You think they love you and they want to help you. Maybe you can keep thinking it if you want to. However, the real problem we have is that while we're BSing around, we're getting to the point that we'll have no access to resources to counter any of this and will be totally expendable. Because from the political platform, they're already expendable. From the activity, the extinction operations and genocide operations has already been activated. However, to the point of no return is what our people should be concerned of. You know how they say, when you sit down too long while they're beating your ass, and after a while you don't have the strength to fight back at all, and you have no option of recourse. Meaning that while divine allows you some breathing and some opportunity of recourse, it would be wise if you stop being passive and start learning something. I mean, real substance, not opinion, but facts about what's going on. And among other things, Aboriginal title should be on the subject of all melanated people's minds, i.e., copper-colored people who are the Americans. Distinguished from the Paleolith hybrid Europeans who have been operating on American soil for the last couple centuries under doctrine of discovery and the Spanish Inquisition operations. Now, that's a fact, not an opinion. Anything else?
Let me say. Let me see. Somebody here wants to know if you, one they want you to come and speak in Bermuda.
Huh?
If you could go look on a boat, I know you're not going to fly. Bermuda. Vatican Royals.
Let me read another one here to share with the people. And remember, the House in the future, she'll make those determinations. We'll get some of these printed up. It's about 3 pages.
Do you have it on a document that we can turn into a PDF?
Huh?
Is it on in a computer? Or?
I have it on one of my computers. I have about 4 or 5 computers. I go on my old stuff. I'll find it. But basically,
it's what is all natural public notice. All natural people and citizens should be aware of these facts. Know that the following are laws and issues applicable at North America via the United States.
And they can take a screenshot of this if they can, and just for starters.
You need to move it over and then hold it up a little bit right there. So I don't know if they can. It's not clear.
I know, but you already know they could. We'll just start saying it to them. Matter of fact, we'll get this together and add this to the flash drive.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Add it to the flash drive.
All right.
Because it's very important. And let me see. No, this is again, and this is for those who have been affected or infected by persons and trolls who have been discouraging you in relationship to national venues for proper jurisprudence known as consular court. This would be a counter to those troll activities. Number 9, there have not been any lawful judges within the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation doing business at North America since 1789. There have just been arbitrators and administrators. Now that's a fact. Reference. FRC GE 281 US 461 Keller versus PE 2